Hi. Why do healthy routines fall apart when life gets busy? Well, that's obvious. Life gets busy, doesn't it? So, and I shared a post yesterday just about how, your routines can slip and you can fall off the wagon. It happens all the time. Um, and it happens to me too. Actually, it's happening to me right now. I'll give you a little heads up. There's a lot going on I've got two businesses. I've got a personal training business and a weight loss business. And with the personal training business, I'm launching a new program in there. So, and it's a busy time in life right now because it's January and February and everyone wants to get healthy and fit. So, there's some routines that have fallen away. I normally walk every day, but I've decided that hour and a half that I normally kind of use, I'm going to use elsewhere. But it's not forever, and that's what you got to be thinking about that all the time. Sometimes routines will slip, and sometimes you need to pull things back. And then the most important part, you're not pulling things back permanently, but just until you kind of life can kind of come together a little bit more, then you move forward. And I find you've got to have some non-negotiables. Like my non-negotiables are food prep, because if food prep goes out the window, then everything else goes out the window. And also my other non-negotiable is I have an accountability group where I send accountability stats every day around my health, around other areas of my business. So I don't let that slip either, because that is the glue that holds me. So, but life gets busy, and busy life breaks perfect plans. That's what happens. Like routines, they're kind of built, for the perfect life, not real life. Because, obviously work, family, stress, tiredness, that's just happened to me just over the last few months as well. I've got a bit, I've had to deal with that. So I've had to pull back some of my routines, but I slowly come back in there, right? So that's the way I deal with things, is just pull things back. And I coach my clients how to do that as well. I'll pull things back. And then when life gets a little bit less hectic, I kind of move back into the routines again. So that's what I do. But, but what happens is I find people, their plans collapse and then they start blaming themselves, or just kicking themselves up the butt, because you can't help life. Life is just going to happen. There's a lot of, and perfect plans are just not achievable. You got to work with it. You got to, work around it. You've got to work around your life, but you got to keep the habits going. And be consistent with them. But consistency isn't about motivation either. So falling off track doesn't mean that you lack discipline. That's one thing I'm going to say right now, right? Just because you fall off doesn't mean you lack discipline, because sometimes people can beat themselves up over that. And the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. But the idea is to keep connected to the habits, okay? Not all the habits maybe, but your non-negotiables, right? Your non-negotiables. And your life just has to go in and out like that all the time, because what people do is they go, oh, I can't do this. I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's what happens. Then they fall off track completely. And then it takes them years to get back. So, that's what you don't want. Like you've got to really kind of work with yourself and make sure just pull back on the habits. Like one of the first things that goes for me is my walking. And, all the other habits will stay around, but eventually I'll come back to it, So, but really it's about building routines that flex with life. Flex in, flex out. We're going to have busy times. You're going to have family, stress, work, all that sort of stuff gets in the road more, so we've got to kind of keep those habits in your routines. As I said, even if it's just pulling them back slightly just for a little while, even making things, I was talking to a client of mine last night. She's fallen off, and, she's back again. And I said, hey, look, even with meal prep, you just got to keep it real simple. That's what I do, is I just have very basic salads that I pre-pack in the fridge that always get done. And that could be, even just baby tomatoes and salad, and then have tuna there with fruit bowl, like that's when I'm really, really, really busy. I have these things that I do, I pull back, that allow me to keep the healthy eating going. Just and the most important is just keep moving, and keep the movement in your life as well. If you can't do a ton of walking, even if you pull it back, I just pull it back a little bit, do a little bit in the morning, and not too much, but just get moving a little bit. But having that realistic expectations of yourself. Let's face it, life gets busy, life hits. But what you don't want is to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then everything else falls around your ears, and then you're putting on more weight, or getting more unhealthy, or less fit, or whatever. And then 10 years down the track, you're like, oh Jesus, haven't been to the gym for 10 years. Oh, I haven't looked after my health for 10 years, because really time ticks. And if you're not really flexible with these things, and keeping your health at number one top priority, and adjusting and moving with life, and keeping your non-negotiables in there, you're going to turn around and your health's gone, and then you're more prone to diseases and stuff like that. So you don't want that. So you just got to have this kind of balance where you're coming in, coming out, shuffling things around, making sure your non-negotiables are there, and all that sort of stuff. So I thought I'd just talk about that today, because it's been coming up a lot lately in the businesses that I've got in personal training, but also in health, and the clients that I'm talking to, and me as well too. Because like at the moment, this present moment, I'm probably the busiest I've ever been, just because it's the season and I've got a lot going on. But I don't let that detract from my non-negotiables that I've got to kind of get done. So just thought I'd let that one in. But hey, thanks for chiming in. We'll see you next week.